Okay. Could y'all hear me clear now? Can you hear me clear now? Check. Okay. Okay. Good. Good. All right. So I was saying today I wanted to build a little bit about sciences of life and the importance of learning sciences of life. Science comes from the Latin root sire, which means to know. So a scientist is really a person that has dedicated their lives to knowing. So if you're a scientist of life, you've dedicated your life to knowing about various different aspects of life. And that's important. Gaining that knowledge or becoming aware or more conscious of different aspects of life is very, very important. Unfortunately, when people are indoctrinated into a religion, they're not necessarily encouraged to examine and to study different sciences of life. They're oftentimes discouraged to do that. And I'm sure those of you who've come from the church or who may be in the church right now, or who may be in a masjid or a mosque, who are Muslim or Jehovah Witnesses, any of those various different type of religions, can relate to the fact that a lot of times when you're a part of those type of congregations or you're a congregate, a lot of times you're not encouraged to study different sciences of life. You're discouraged. You're oftentimes told, oh, no, that's the devil's tools. No, you don't need to open your mind up to learn about this, that, and the third. And it's unfortunate that people are encouraged to keep a closed mind like that because it limits your ability to just navigate life and to interact with other people. I remember some years ago, this is probably maybe within a span of the last 20 years, I was working at a light industrial plant one time, and we were assembling um, different products, and there were groups of us in different quadrants. So in my quadrant, it was probably 6 people all working together in close proximity. So most of the shift was just conversational. We were doing our work and just conversating with one another. And there was a sister that I got a chance to meet during that time, and she was real religious. She's the type of person that was so indoctrinated, she would not listen and learn about anything outside of what her pastor was telling her. And in addition to that, she was taught to be afraid of anything that was outside of what she was hearing from her pastor. So she wouldn't entertain any type of conversations or open her mind up to anything like that. And one day I was having a conversation with her, and I asked her, does she study Satanism? Because obviously, if you want to know about God, you should know about the antithesis. You should know about God's opponent, right? Because one of the things I was communicating to her is just as equally invested you are in the principles and the values of your religion, there are other people who are equally as invested and even sometimes more invested in what they believe, their principles and their values. And it's important to get to know what they're into, because you get a greater sense of how to interact with people, especially if you consider yourself a person spreading the good news or striving to share the gospel with people, you should know where to meet people where they are and what their belief system is or what their principles and values are, so that you're equipped with how to communicate and engage people, if for no other reason than that. That's why it's important that you should know what other people are into. So she wanted to debate with me, talking about, oh, no, I don't need to, all this other stuff. And I know this, that, and the third. And I said, for example, Mike standing right next to you is a Satanist. He's a devil worshiper. Her eyes got this big. And she turned around and looked at Mike. And I said, Mike, tell her. Now, all of this time we sitting here communicating and working our shifts together, and it didn't come up like obviously that he was a Satanist and he was a devil worshiper or anything like that. Nothing like that. We never discussed that. I picked that up by certain buzzwords Mike would be using, as well as the type of jewelry that he would wear. I knew that he was into that. So she turned around and looked at Mike, and I said, tell her, Mike. And he's like, yes, I am. And then when it became open, we started to have more of an open discussion on Satan. Mike? And he's like, yes, I am. And then when it became open, we started to have more of an open discussion on Satanism and circumstances under why he established the Satanic Church and actually wrote the Satanic Bible. And she was like kind of scared. And I said, see, this whole time he's standing right next to you, and you had no clue that that's what he's into. And he didn't say a word to you. That shows you why knowledge or awareness or consciousness is important. Because if you were as aware as I am and you were conscious enough, you would realize that this is what this person is into. And it's not nothing to be afraid or threatened about, but you should know who's who in the zoo, what people are into, because it gives you a greater sense in how to engage them. And at the same time, when you know about their principles and their values, you know what their foundation is, you know what grounds them. And then their principles and values sets the premise on their social norms, how they interact with other people. Because whatever their principles are, whatever their values are, it tells you, it informs you on how they're going to treat not only themselves, but other people, as well as the environment. One of the things that you learn about Satanism is typically in the church, there is this theme of abstinence. And it is through abstinence or restricting yourself from being involved in various different activities that you gain the power and the discipline, right? Knowing that gives you a greater sense on what Mike has the potential to do. Now, I can talk to Mike all day because I know what he's into. But her, she had no clue. And like I said, this was within the span of the last 20 years. To this day, she is one of my homegirls where she, to this day, will reference me or reach out to me if she had questions about various different things, just simply because of that interaction. And I was able to open up her eyes and show her the importance of what I'm sharing today about the sciences of life and why it's a good investment to learn about the various different perspectives that people have and what they're actually into. Right? So today is the 20th, and in our supreme mathematics, 2 is wisdom and 0 is a cipher. Also, just as a side note, the numerals or the numbers that we use in our system, they're not English. When we're looking at a cipher is not just simply a person, place, or thing, but it represents the whole, and it also simultaneously represents nothing. So when we're talking about wisdom cipher or the number 20, one of the things that we learn is wisdom is right discernment. A cipher is 360 degrees. So 360 is understanding equality of that cipher. So in order for you to have an equal understanding of any person, place, or thing, you have to approach that person, place, or thing with a sense of discernment, or right judgment, which means wisdom allows you or enables you to be able to look at the various different angles or perspectives or degrees of that cipher. In other words, you're not looking at people, places, and things with a closed mind or a limited perspective. Going back to that story that I shared just about Mike, she had a very limited perspective of how she viewed Mike through her Christian lens. And because of that, when I brought that out in the conversation, she got blindsided because there were various different things that she did not study or she didn't rightly discern concerning who Mike is and what Mike is actually into. So Wisdom Cipher is also saying that you approach people, places, and things, and you strive to look at things with an open mind and to be aware of what's going on in your peripheral. Because if you're looking at things with a closed mind, and a lot of things that you're just simply going to miss, which means you put yourself in a position to be blindsided by life. Another example is I know this one brother that he was in a relationship with a sister and it didn't really work out. And that relationship didn't work out, and he didn't really give himself enough time before he strived to be invested in another relationship. So what ended up happening is the next woman that he chose to be in a relationship with was just the complete opposite of what the previous woman was. She was more of a lighter skinned woman. He went and got a woman with a darker complexion. She was a little taller, about 5'9". He went and got a woman that was 5'6". She was more of a woman that worked in the blue collar realm. He went and got a woman that worked more in the white collar realm. He just got the complete opposite of who she wasn't. Right? So looking at that limited lens, he didn't see who this present woman actually was in her totality. He was just choosing someone who wasn't who that other person was. So once he got this other relationship, he thought that it was good because she was just who that other person wasn't, but it took him time to actually see her for who and what she really was. All of the things that he simply overlooked because he was just looking for somebody who that person wasn't. You see how that limited perspective put him in a position, and now he got to the point where he realized what he really chose, what he really got, which wasn't something that he would have chose under other circumstances if he had more of a wiser perspective in how he approached her. So having an open mind and striving to make wise decisions and choices when we approach people, places, and things gives us much more of a capacity to be in a position where we're better able to navigate situations and circumstances. You peace? My baby waking up. Hold on. Here you go. Here you go. Peace, GR. Anytime you're talking about a shift where it's a transition from one season to the next, that's always significant, you know. Now, significant to the point where people's gonna get some extra sensory perception and powers and shit like that. And no, I wouldn't go all of that far. You know, even when you look at various different societies, different indigenous societies and classical civilizations always had some form of acknowledgement or ritualizing transitions from one season to the next. Even if it was to celebrate the harvest time, or you're celebrating a time when you're planting. So these particular shifts and changes were the first clock that we used, which also means that there was a different relationship that we had as indigenous people in classical civilizations in relationship to women, because women represented one of the first clocks that gave us insight into the various different cycles of life. Right? Which showed you that there was a different perspective and sense of respect and honor that we had for women prior to the type of societies that we see today that are misogynistic and chauvinistic, and which is really the outgrowth of Europe. And I'm just saying that because a lot of times people don't know what time it is because they don't reference the clock. And when I say reference the clock, I'm talking about reading the world and nature. You remember some years back when they had that tsunami in Southeast Asia and it killed millions of people? There were some people that escaped that tsunami. And the way that they escaped that tsunami is they paid attention to their livestock. They noticed that their livestock just intuitively started to go to higher ground. And the people who cared for that livestock paid attention to that and followed them. And they were able to avoid the tsunami because they were paying attention to nature. True indeed. They were in tune with nature. One of the names that the Caucasian was given by the indigenous people here in North America is the noisemaker. Not just the person that spoke with a forked tongue, but also a noisemaker. Noise is considered dissonance, or it's inharmonious. It's disruptive. And the reason why they called them the noisemaker is because they disrupted or interrupted the natural sound and the ecosystem of the environment. So look at a lot of the different places where we live at with the technology and the industrialism. A lot of times people are so immersed in those type of environments that they're accustomed to sound that is not even natural anymore. If they were standing on their front porch, they couldn't tell you the difference between a blue jay and a cardinal, or a finch. Hell, they might not be able to tell you the difference between a raccoon and a skunk. So a lot of times living in environments where there is a natural sound, that form of disruption deafens us to being in tune with nature. So being in tune with nature is also a way of being in tune with the clock, knowing what time it is. Yeah, they can tell the train to the bus, and it's cool. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm just saying there has to be a healthy balance. You should be able to read the nature around you and be able to determine different plants that grow around your house. But you should also be able to determine what's going on in your neighborhood and read those type of signs too. There has to be a balance. Like, you have to be a monk meditating on a mountain. You have to be doing yoga with this beautiful backdrop with a setting sun. That's cool to be able to do it like that, but you should be able to do yoga in your hood too, with police sirens in the background. Do yoga there. Don't just meditate on a mountain, meditate in the midst of chaos too. Be able to meditate in a house with 6 children, or somebody's doing construction down the street. Meditate in the midst of that. So there has to be a sense of balance. That's what homeostasis is. It's balance. It's easy to be a monk on a mountaintop. It's easy to do yoga with a sunset backdrop. Do all of that shit in the midst of the bullshit. True indeed. Master Self-Allah said, peace comes from within. True. And that's why we greet each other in peace, and we strive to leave in peace. We set the tone and the parameters of not only how we attend this world, but how we interact with one another. We may go through some things in between that, but at least we came in peace and we strive to end in peace. The same thing that my old earth used to tell us when I was growing up, me and my siblings, like, don't go to bed mad and don't wake up mad. Strive to resolve things throughout the course of your day so that you can go to bed in peace. You know what I mean? So yeah, like, some of the things that I'm talking about are just examples of the sciences of life, various different things that play a key role in not only shaping our consciousness, but our interactions with one another, how we attend this world, and how we relate to the environment. So that's the beautiful thing about this culture. It's not a religion and it's not a hierarchy. There's no one that I report to that's above me. I'm self-guided, I'm self-defined, and I follow to the extent of learning to lead myself. That's what we encourage all of our members to do. Follow to the extent of learning to lead yourself. If that means you have to follow a 12-year-old right now because they're the best knower in a situation, you need to follow that 12-year-old until you're able to learn to lead. If that's a 55-year-old, you need to follow that person to the extent until you're able to learn to lead. There is no hierarchy. And that's important to understand that, because when you have a hierarchy, you could never grow beyond the expectations and the concept of the person that's at the top. And a lot of times a person at the top, just simply because you're in this form, there's going to be some limitation. Our consciousness is contained within this form, as long as we're in the form. So there's going to be some limits to our life experience. In order to ultimately be all-knowing, omnipotent, and omnipresent, you have to connect with others. That's an interpersonal concept. It's not a personal concept. It's interpersonal. So my niche or my life experience, things that I'm good at, some person may reference me because that is my area of expertise. I'm a lord of that world, or I'm a lord of this world too, or I'm a lord of that world over there. But there's somebody else that may be a lord of another world. But it's through all of us that we become the all-eye seeing, because there's a lot of things that you're qualified and able to see through my eyes, just like I'm qualified and able to see things through your eyes based upon the relationships that we establish with one another. So again, sciences of life is important because it allows you to tap into those various different perspectives. Again, wisdom cipher. A cipher is a 360-degree circle. So there's 360 various different angles or perspectives of that circle. If you walking around with this mentality like I'm self-made and I don't need nobody, you just waiting for some shit to happen to you in life. You've literally put yourself in a position where it's only a matter of time before you get blindsided by life. It's only a matter of time. Because what you're ultimately saying is that your mind is closed to various different perspectives and the relationships that are necessary in order for you to gain a greater sense of this world and yourself. So various different perspectives allows you to expand your knowledge or your awareness or your consciousness. Okay, having knowledge by knowing the surname, the supreme or best examples gives us a way to achieve victory and lead self. Okay, I see that. Yeah, we're collectively supreme. So it's like a glass of water. If you took a glass of water from the ocean, you are a part of that ocean, but you're also contained within that glass. That makes sense? It's the same thing with supreme intelligence and supreme consciousness. So in terms of the sciences of everything in life, don't limit yourself from learning. But always approach learning with a sense of respect and humility. Because that keeps you aware and alert so that you can minimize being blindsided by stepping into the unknown. What do I mean by that? A lot of times you see people who step into things without that sense of reverence or respect or humility, and they get caught up in that world because it's an unknown that they're stepping into. So you have to have the proper attitude in order to learn anything. So that's vitally important. No man is an island, a cipher is complete when you build with the people you meet. Yeah, true indeed. And we know the man who was on an island and what he produced while being on that island. Right? We know the man who was on an island and what he produced on that island. And I ain't talking about the island of Dr. Moreau. So let me give you some insight into that. We talking about sciences of life. One of the characteristics of a person that does that is not just a hermit, but it's also a person that practices antisocial behavior. And there's a whole list of other characteristics that fits a person like that description, that when you look at horror movies, Freddy Krueger fit the same kind of description. Michael Myers, same type of description. Jason, same type of description. Norman Bates, same type of description. All of these various different monsters had various different characteristics that if you were to look at a DSM, a diagnostic statistical manual or mental illness, you'll see that people who became serial killers or people who are mass murderers or all of these other various different things, when they go and look at their background, one of the things that they see with people who had these type of qualities is most of them lived on an island, symbolically speaking. They really didn't have close relationships with other human beings. Some of them was killing animals when they were younger. And they lacked empathy, a connectedness with other human beings. There's a good book, and I was telling one of my brothers about it yesterday, called Weeping in the Playtime of Others. And the book chronicles the backstory of various different people who were part of the foster care, juvenile detention industry. And one of the people that they chronicle in the book is Charles Manson, and they go over his whole history. One of the things that they oftentimes don't tell you about Charles Manson is this dude spent more time institutionalized from birth, from when he was born, living with various different people, being institutionalized, living in foster care, living in this home, juvenile detention centers. This dude was passed around like that the majority of his life. He never had a stable home life with one parent in the house. I'm not even talking about a stable family environment with two parents. I'm talking about with even just one parent. He never had that. He was staying with an uncle or aunt over there, staying over here. That was this dude's whole background. He was shaped in terms of his brain architecture on an island. He never was in an environment where he was able to develop healthy relationships with other human beings. He was molested. He was molesting others. This dude. So when you see not only his level of sophistication or his intelligence, because he had to develop that in order to survive, in order to navigate various different environments. So he learned that. This dude is very, very intelligent, but yet the empathy, to be able to connect with other human beings, the social, emotional aspect of it, he never developed it. He never developed it. So when he got sentenced and incarcerated, he didn't kill anybody. Charles Manson didn't murder anybody. He was charged with manipulating others and getting them to murder people. That's what that dude is in jail for. Look up his history. He wasn't a mass murderer personally. They charged him with basically mind control, manipulating the minds of these younger people who committed these crimes, and he's in jail for that. So when you look at some of those various different qualities in terms of antisocial behavior, isolating yourself, not developing healthy social, emotional relationships and empathy for other human beings or the environment, you see the forging of a psychopathic personality. So my old earth, she was a social psychologist. So I had the benefit of growing up in a household with a DSM, and she would teach that to me and my siblings. That was the type of nomenclature that we had in the house. Let me put that word in here so y'all can look it up. Nomenclature. So that was the kind of language that was spoken in my household. Like, she would look at different things and be like, that's self-mutilation. This is dissociative disorder. This is this is that. you know? But that's a science of life that I learned when I was young. So in this world, in this society, you come in contact with people from various different places that have various different beliefs, um, various different things that they see as principles that guide them. They value things differently. In order to properly navigate society, it's important to be able to know what people are into. So that you have the capacity to properly engage people if it's necessary, or you know who to avoid. There's a difference between a person that is on crack compared to a person that is on meth. They look different. They behave a little different. It's important to know the difference. I was out in Seattle one time, and at that time, Seattle